When you think about 1947 and the partition of British India, the sheer scale of human movement is just, well, staggering.
It really is. We're talking one of the largest migrations ever seen. Millions and millions of people forced from their homes.
And the human cost behind those numbers is immense.
Yeah.
So many lives lost, so much suffering.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. Why did Pakistan separate from India? We've got a historical analysis here that digs into it.
Right. So our aim isn't just to list dates and names.
No, not at all. We want to really unpack the whole thing, the history leading up to it, the main reasons, how the division actually happened, and, crucially, the consequences that are still felt today.
Think of it as getting a quick but deep understanding of a really complex and pivotal moment.
Precisely, a focused look.
Okay, so to really get this, we need a bit of background. Our source reminds us, India had centuries of Muslim rule before the British, right? The Delhi Sultanate, the Mughals.
Yes, a long history. And that context is important. You have these large established empires.
But then things shifted dramatically with British colonial rule, especially after the 1857 uprising.
Right. And understanding that legacy where Muslims had held significant power helps you understand the anxieties that came later, the fear of becoming a minority group after independence.
And during British rule itself, this analysis highlights something crucial: growing tension between Hindus and Muslims. It wasn't always like that, was it?
No, it developed gradually. The source points to a growing sense of marginalization among many Muslims over time.
Marginalization how?
Well, things like feeling underrepresented in government jobs, concerns about economic opportunities, perceived disparities, sometimes real ones. You know, it fed into this feeling of being pushed aside politically and economically.
Okay, which leads us straight into the key reasons for the partition itself.
Mm-hmm.
The most obvious one seems to be the religious differences.
Yes, the growing cultural and religious divide. Our source emphasizes this wasn't just about theology. It fostered a real fear among many Muslims about their place, their identity, their future in an independent India dominated by a Hindu majority.
And this fear, it sort of paved the way for the two-nation theory.
Exactly. That theory became central. It's interesting, the analysis notes the philosopher Allama Iqbal was proposing elements of it back in 1930.
Wow, that early.
Huh?
Almost 2 decades before it happened.
Yes. But it was Muhammad Ali Jinnah who really became its political champion.
So for anyone listening, what was the core idea, the absolute essence of the two-nation theory?
Well, at its heart, it argued that Hindus and Muslims weren't just different religions living side by side, but were actually two fundamentally distinct nations.
Different customs, traditions, the whole package.
Yes. And therefore, the argument went, these two distinct nations needed their own separate homelands to protect their way of life. Self-determination, basically.
Though the source does mention some debate, even within the Muslim League, about what exactly defined a nation there. Was it purely religion or other factors too?
That's right, there were nuances. But the driving force was this idea of distinct national identities based primarily on religion.
Then there were the political differences, specifically between the Indian National Congress and the Muslim League. They both wanted independence, but saw the future very differently.
Very differently. Jinnah and the Muslim League increasingly saw Congress as, well, mainly looking out for Hindu interests.
Right. So Jinnah became convinced
That Muslims needed their own state. He believed their rights wouldn't be adequately protected in a unified India where Hindus were the majority. A separate state seemed like the only guarantee.
And we can't overlook the British role in all this, that infamous divide and rule policy. It sounds like they actively fanned the flames sometimes.
Oh, definitely. The analysis gives examples favoring one community over another in jobs or land allocation. Little things maybe, but they added up.
Directly fueling resentment.
Absolutely. Deepening those existing fault lines between the communities, it made cooperation much harder.
Okay, now things take a really dark turn. Direct Action Day, 1946. Our source frames this as a major turning point.
It was absolutely pivotal. The Muslim League called for direct action on August 16th to push hard for Pakistan.
And the result wasn't peaceful demonstrations?
No. It led to horrific widespread riots. Calcutta especially saw terrible violence, just brutal.
And this violence?
Yeah.
It just shattered hopes for a united future.
For many, yes. The source really conveys how that violence escalated mistrust to a breaking point. It made the idea of Hindus and Muslims peacefully coexisting in one country seem, well, impossible to many people.
So with that kind of violence and distrust as the backdrop, The British are leaving after World War II,
Mm.
and they proposed the Mountbatten Plan.
Right, which essentially laid out the roadmap for partition, for dividing the subcontinent.
And things moved incredibly fast then.
Very fast.
Yeah.
Pakistan was created on August 14th, 1947. India gained independence the very next day, August 15th. Two new nations born basically overnight amidst chaos.
And the source points out the planning for this massive upheaval was lacking.
Hugely lacking. The logistical nightmare, the lack of preparation for the mass migrations, the rushed drawing of the border, the Radcliffe Line, it all contributed massively to the suffering and violence that followed.
Which brings us to the consequences, the human cost. Our analysis mentions around 15 million people migrating across the new borders.
15 million. It's almost impossible to truly picture that. The largest mass migration in human history.
And the death toll. Estimates are around 1 million people killed in the communal violence.
Around 1 million, yes. Just unimaginable violence and loss of life accompanying that displacement. It's vital we acknowledge the sheer human tragedy here.
And it wasn't just killing. The source details widespread abduction, rape, women disappearing in the chaos. A truly horrific layer to it all.
A terrible reality of that period.
That's
And the
brutal.
impact didn't just stop in 1947.
No. If you look at the bigger picture, this event set the stage for decades of hostility between India and Pakistan.
Exactly. It sowed the seeds for multiple wars, ongoing political tensions. The relationship remains deeply troubled right up to the present day.
So pulling it all together, this deep dive really shows this separation wasn't some simple decision. It was incredibly complex.
Absolutely, a result of all those intertwined factors. The religious divides, the political maneuvering, British colonial policies, and that tragic spiral of violence and mistrust.
It wasn't sudden. It grew over decades.
Precisely. Deep historical roots, differing ideas about what a nation should be and how the British managed or mismanaged the situation, all feeding into it.
And as our source makes clear, the legacy of partition is still incredibly powerful today, shaping the whole region.
Which leaves you with something to think about, doesn't it? How do massive historical events like this, marked by such suffering and creating such lasting divisions, continue to echo through generations? How do they keep shaping national identities and the way countries deal with each other, even now? It really shows how history isn't just the past, it's constantly shaping our present.